Hi guys, I apologize, I've not posted in a while. I've been on the project, I'm kind of through at the moment, so I should resume my regular schedule going forward. Kind of reminds you of a certain universally acclaimed production company, right? Let's get to it. So there's this thing. I downloaded it from Google. I'll put a link directly to it in the description so you can follow along. Just download it and pull it into your media pool. First thing we do, we go to Effects. Under Effects, go to Effects, bring in a Fusion comp to the timeline. Then click on the Fusion comp, press Ctrl D. We want to make it a 45-second clip. So 45:00, enter. Put the playhead on it and go to the Fusion page. Drag the media out to the end here. Close the inspector for now. Let's just pull this out here. Then we go to media pool, bring that world map PNG in. We could rename it to world. And then if we drag it to this left viewer, if we move it down, scroll down a bit, you see it's 1024 by 768. Not exactly 1920 by 1080, which is the project setting for this. See there. So I'm going to go here, press Shift Spacebar and try resize. This note just resizes whatever the input is to the timeline resolutions. If I drag this to the viewer, if I scroll down, you see it's now 1920 by 1080. And we can close the media pool and click on here and just say fit. Now from here, we're going to bring in a luma key. We want to remove the black and put that in here. If we drag this to the viewer, we see we have a transparent. And the next thing we bring in is a P image emitter. Then we bring in a P render. We can drag this to this viewer. That will take a while to load. You'll see that nothing is showing. See the frame we're at. We are on frame 158. Let's do something. Go to P image emitter, open inspector. Under controls, you'll see lifespan is 100. That is 100 frames. So if I put it here now, and this generates again, you'll see we have something. So we need to make it the full length of this comp. Type 1080. Now if I zoom in here on this view, just have dots. I don't want it to be dots. I want it to be a different look. So I'm going to go to P image emitter. Under X density and Y density under controls, right click on Y density, expression, connect this to X density. So I'll reduce the X density to 0.05. So we have that. Then we go to style, change it from point to end gun. Then we pick this particular flavor of end gun. It's kind of too big. We go to size controls and we change the size to 0.075. Still too big, put another 0 on there. And we have essentially the makings of what we want. Then from this pre-render, Shift Spacebar, let's bring in a replicate 3D. Then we bring a shape 3D. Now for this shape 3D, let's drag that to this viewer. It's just a plane. Under inspector, change this to cylinder. Increase the base subdivisions to 100. The height of subdivisions can stay as 1. The radius, change it to 0.55. Then the height, let's just make it maybe 0.2. So there, and then we click here to have a bottom and the top. Then we go to transform. I want it to be standing. So like this, so it's standing like this. If we put on the lights and shading, we see that it's standing. So I'm going to go here and bring in a replace material 3D. Then I'm going to click on effects here, go to templates, under fusion, select shaders, then bring in Chrome shader. One of my favorite shaders. Connect this Chrome shader to replace Material 3D and connect the replace Material 3D to replicate 3D. If I drag this to the viewer now, you see we have this nice looking thing here. If you zoom out, press Shift and rotate it up so you can see how it looks. I bring in the renderer 3D. The renderer 3D, let's just make it a hardware renderer. Connect this to it, drag the renderer to this view. You see it's kind of small here. So between this replicate 3D and renderer 3D, click on replicate 3D, shift spacebar, transform. So we pick transform 3D and click add. Then this transform 3D, go to the Z value and type 1.321, enter. So it fills the screen perfectly. Now all we need is this image. We don't need any other thing from all of this. So I'm just going to right click on here and save image. So I've already done a sample of it before. I'll just click on this and overwrite it. Say save. Yes. So I can delete all of this. So I go media pool, I'm going to pull that in here. I just drag this and put it in the media pool. And I can minimize this again. And I bring this dotted world PNG here. And then we have that here. Next thing we do, bring in a shape 3D. And for the shape 3D, under inspector, change that to sphere. And then the base subdivisions and height subdivisions, let's just increase that to, I'd rather 300. 300 across base subdivisions and height subdivisions for the smoothest look. Connect this to the green input of the shape 3D. Let's drag that to the viewer. And let's hold down Control and zoom out. We want to create that rock-like looking thing in the middle. So I'm going to bring another shape 3D here. And for this shape 3D, I'm going to make it a sphere too. But if I drag that to this viewer, it's just a regular shape. Let me close this media pool so we have more space. For this shape 3D, let's increase subdivisions to 300 all through. Then I could have just copied this and pasted it actually, but let's move on. Now for this shape 3D, because I don't want it to be the same size as this, so I'm just going to go to transform. I'm going to go here and just say 0.75. Then I can go, let's bring in the merge node. So we just see how it all sits together. Connects the shape to this, connect the shape to that. So if we drag this to the viewer, you see we have that small blob in there, and then we have the others on top of it. But I don't want it to be this smooth, so I'm going to click on the shape 3D, press shift spacebar, bring in displace 3D node. So I need an input for it to displace this. So I'm going to bring in a fast noise node, drag that to this left viewer. Then I'm going to, under inspector for fast noise, uncheck lock XY, increase the Y scale to 20. Let's drag this fast noise to this side, bring in a transform node, then bring in a rectangular mask node. Connect the fast noise to the transform, connect the rectangle mask to the mask input of the transform. Now for this rectangle mask, let's drag that to this left viewer. I'm going to increase the height to 1, but I want this whole thing to be on this side. So I'm just going to go to the X value for this rectangle mask and type 0.25. So it's on the other half here. So for this transform, first things first, I don't want to change anything here, so you see the effect of what I'm trying to do. So if I connect this transform now to the input of this displace, you see it displaces this. Let's turn on the lights and shading so you get to see how it looks. It's a little too much. So I go to displace 3D. I drop the scale to 0.25. So if we zoom in a bit, you see this looks more like what we want to create. If I rotate this particular shape, and I go to transform and I rotate it on the y-axis just to rotate it around, you'll see that we get to this part where the edges here don't align. Let me hold down Control. So you see this part, they don't align well. But if I now go to this transform and I click on this flip, it smoothens out. That's the reason why I have this thing here. I got this trick from one of the templates built into Davinci Resolve, not my original idea. I want it to have a bit of a gold shading. I'm going to click on Displace 3D, Shift Spacebar, and Replace Material 3D. We're going to be using this a lot in this tutorial. Then I'm going to click on the effects again, under shaders, bring in the chrome shader yet again, and connect the chrome shader to replace material. So we have this very silvery chrome looking look, but I don't want that. So I'm going to go to this diffuse color, make this green 0.6 and make the blue 0.1. So we already have that gold looking shade thing. One thing I could do though, let's do something interesting. Let's bring in between here and the shape merge 3D. This is just for this shape here. I'm going to click on shape. I'm going to bring in a transform 3D. Put that here. Then between this replace material and this merge 3D, I can bring in another transform 3D. So for this transform 3D, I want it to get this thing to rotate. So I'm going to just go here and right click on the Y rotation, click on expression, and within the expression, just type time. If I move by 1 frame forward, it moves by 1 degree around like so. When I get to 360, it would have completed the full rotation. Then I do the same thing for this one. For this one is the rock. Right click on Y and click on expression, but this time around we make it minus time. I want it to rotate in an alternate fashion. So if I play this back, look at this view, you see this rotating the other way and this rotating the other way. It makes it just look a little more interesting. Stop, close effects tab, and we do the text. Now for the text, I'm going to use sText and not text 3D because of some manipulations I want to do. So shift spacebar, sText. This part is where you must use Davinci Resolve 19 because that's from where they introduced sText in Davinci Resolve. So I'm going to drag this text to the right viewer, change this font to this Accelera B Alt medium. You can use any font you want really. Caps, then type Resolve. I want the size of the text to be really large. So I found that if I make the size of the text really large and convert it and extrude it and reduce the size, it has a bit more detail. So I increase the size to 1.5, just trying to let you know why I did it this way. Let's give it a bit of tracking, just a little bit, 4.01. Then we bring in shift spacebar, extrude 3D. And for extrude 3D, I'm going to go to extrude depth, set that to 0.1. Extrude subdivisions, you can just set that to 60. And then the bevel depth, set that to 0.01. Bevel width, 0.01. And then go to custom. I want the bevel to have a smooth edge. So I'm just going to click on here, the second grid, drag it up here. Click on here. Then drag this other one down here. And then I can, let's move it up, perfect. Then I select both of them, press F on the keyboard, then drag this handle, touches this, make sure it is straight, drag this handle, then click on here, make sure this is straight to the edge like so, click on here, make sure this is straight to the edge like so. Drag this to the viewer. You see we have this curve, very nice smooth edge here. Bring in replace material 3D. I told you we're going to use that a lot on this tutorial. Drag that here. Let's pull this up a little bit. Now for the replace material, I'm going to bring in a chrome shader. Let's just copy this chrome shader. Copy and paste. Then I connect this to replace material, drag that to the viewer. So we have this. I double click on this to reset it to the original color it came with. So we have this color here, but I wanted to have this brushed steel look. Interestingly, if you go to effects under fusion and shaders, there's brushed metal here. So if I bring this here, let me connect that to this replace material 3D. And then we have this brushed metal look, which is cool. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to use the chrome. Let's use brushed metal instead. And I can increase the intensity of the shine. Maybe let's increase it to 5 and see how that looks. You see, Yep, I think I like this. Maybe not so much. Let's just say 3.5 so it doesn't lost too much. All right, so I want this edge here, I wanted to have a red band at the edge here. So to bring in that reddish thing at the edge of it, I'm going to click on this blank part and shift space bar, bring in S outline node. Then I'm going to connect this text to the S outline. And for the S outline, I'm going to leave it at 0.01. Then this same extrude I have here, let's just copy it. The reason I'm copying it is because I don't want to have to recreate this curve again. Nah, it's too much stress. So I'm going to connect this S outline to the extrude 3D. But for the extrude for this one, I'm going to go to transform for this extrude and unlock the scale for lock XYZ. And for the Z value, make it 0.8. Then for the Z value here, let's just make it 0.15. So if I now go here, I bring in, let me bring in a replace material. For this one, I wanted to have a reddish thing. So I'm going to shift space bar, replace material. Connected. Then let me just bring in the same brushed metal. Copy. Paste. Connect. But for this brushed metal, I don't want it to have this color. So I'm just going to click on this gray and pick red. Let's pick this particular red. And then we have this. I'm going to bring in a merge 3D down here. Connect this to the merge 3D. Connect this to the merge 3D. And let's bring it to the viewer. Let's rotate it and see what we've done just to see the edge here. And then you see we have that sitting perfectly at the edge there. Just gives it a bit more jazz. Let me just increase the space. Not here, like so. Maybe push this up a little bit. Okay. Now between here and here, I want this text here to bend. So I'm going to move all of this, move it up a little bit. Right, I'm going to bring another merge, connect this to this merge, and connect this to this other merge. If I drag this to the viewer, let's make it a single viewer. You see we have this resolve sitting right in the middle of world. Okay, but I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to move this world back. To move it all back, I'm going to have to select all of this, move it back like so, bring in shift space bar, bring in a transform node, put that in here. And for this transform node, I'm just going to go to the Z value and move it back. Let's just say 0.95. And then this resolve now is a little too big. So I'm going to reduce the size of it altogether. I'm going to go to the extrude. Instead of going to the extrude, I'll just put a transform here. So shift space bar, transform 3D. I should be here. And just going to reduce the size to 0.375. So it sits perfectly like so. And it looks like I still have to move this back a wee bit more. So one appears to do. Let me just check, rotate around and see. Move it back. Let me move it forward, maybe like 1.05. Okay, so let's just say 1.1. Let's be on the safe side, like so. Okay, minus 1.1 is fine. Let's rotate it back. Shift, hold down shift and just drag mouse. Like so. And for this resolve, the brushed metal is a little too dark. So I'm just going to go to the shader for this and make it whiter. In fact, let's just make it pure white. All right, now that looks good. I'm zooming to see what it looks like. Okay, that looks good. Then the next thing we do, we need to bring in mad. So I'm going to go and copy this sText, paste, Now I'm going to change this to mad. And I'll change the font. There's a font called Gloss on Blue that I have on my system. Not sure when and where I got it, but you can use any cursive font you have on your system. Okay, so there's this font. You can use any font you have on your system that has this cursive look, kind of grungy cursive text look. And I'm going to change the size of this to 1.25. Let's just copy this extrude. And you know why I'm copying the extrude? I don't want to redo this curve. I'll connect this text to this extrude. Shift spacebar, replace material, 3D. Pull that in here. And I'm going to get the same brush method. Copy. And paste. But for this one, it will still be the same red. Just connect that to this. And after this, I'm going to bring a transform, 3D, and then we can now this merge here, pull this up. We're going to have another merge here. Like so. If it doesn't connect, let's say you drag this in, it doesn't connect. Let me do that again. Let's say you want to connect it. Let's say you drag this here, it doesn't connect. Drag it, see, still it's connected. It just keeps connecting. Let's say you drag this here and you feel it doesn't connect when you drag it in here. So what you just do is connect this here and connect the output of this to this. Then you can drag this in here. Then we connect this to this merge. Because I want this merge to be just for Resolve. And I want this merge to be for both of them so that the same transform works across both of them. Then if we drag this to this viewer, this merge to this viewer, we see we have the mad sitting on Resolve, but I don't want that. I want it to be up, slightly up, then a little bit forwards. So I'm going to go to this transform I created for mad. Let me just right click on this, rename it to mad, and rename this to Resolve. Just be a little tidy and all. Then for this, I'm just going to move it up by I. Just increase the Y value till it gets somewhere like so. Let's say 0.465. Then I'll also move it forward a little bit. So I'm going to increase the Z value. I think that's a little too much. I'm going to rotate this view a bit. So I'm going to hold on Shift and just rotate like so. Rotate like so. Rotate. See, the distance is a little too much. So I'm just going to make it 0.25. See how that looks. That still looks too much. Let's say 0.15. Okay, I think 0.15 works. Yeah, I think 0.15 works. Then we rotate back to the front view, drag to the right, rotate again. When you rotate, you hold down Shift with your mouse button pressed down and drag. If you want to drag it back to the center, you just don't click anything, just drag. Okay, like so. It's looking pretty dark. The red is looking pretty dark for this. So I'm just going to go to this red and pick a brighter red. Yeah, brighter red is better. Now we have the makings of everything. We just need to bend this resolve around the sphere. So what I'm going to do is go between here. This is just for the resolve. Just for the resolve. So between here and here, I'm going to click on this merge 3D, shift spacebar, bring in a bender 3D. Let me just position everything correctly. Just keep scattering everything. So this bender 3D, I'm going to go to amount, type minus 0.275. And then click on X axis. Let's drag this to the viewer so we see what's happening. It's looking really mangled because it was on Y axis before. It just bent that way. I don't want that. So I'm going to click on X axis, mangled. Then, but we go to the angle and just type 90 degrees. And then it's bending each character. But that's not what we want. We want all of them bent together. I'm just going to click on group objects. and then it bends the whole thing round. And if you now go to Merge 3D, you see it's bent round the globe. And we're good to go. The first thing we need now to do is do a little bit of animation. As it is now, you see the globe rotates, alternating fashion, in an alternating fashion. But I want this text now this mad to come from this side, rotate in. I want the result to come from this side, rotating. So I want to bend the mad too. So I'm just going to click on transform. Let's just copy this, bend the 3D, copy. Click on this transform 3D and press Ctrl V to paste. So it will automatically connect that. And then we see we have mat to bend round the sphere. So I'm going to pull that up for this bender 3D, bring in the transform 3D. And then for the MAD, this is the MAD branch, the MAD Resolve branch, right? So what's this connection about though? Okay, this should be connected to this. Okay, so you see this is MAD. Let me drag this up so you get to see it. So this is MAD. I need to add a transform after the bender. Click on transform, bender 3D, then transform 3D. So we click on this transform. What I want to do is I want a situation where I can rotate it around the y-axis, but you see it's rotating around its own center. That's not what I want. I want to rotate around the center of the sphere. So what I'm going to do is let's drag this down a little bit, and let's hold down shift and pull this up. In fact, instead of doing that, okay, we move this up a bit, then we go to this view. I want to top view. Let's drag this up a bit. So I go to click on this transform for MAD. Now for MAD, you see the bend is a little too much for MAD actually. It's a little too bent. So I'm going to go to the bender 3D for MAD and reduce it a little bit. So it aligns with, yeah, something like that. So 0.115 works for MAD. To rotate it, I want pivot to be at the center of the sphere, so that when I rotate it, it's rotating around that center. So I'm going to click on this transform. I will expand pivot here. Then the Z value, I'll move it back until it sits at the center of the sphere, something like that. This seems to be 2.9. Let's say 2.9. Now, if I decide to let me just zoom out a bit, hold down Control, like so. And then if I decide to rotate around the y-axis, let's see. So it's a little close to the end there. So it means a little too. So I'm going to move this maybe 2.7. And if I rotate this, it's even worse. So I'm going to make it -3. And if I rotate this, aha, so it's perfect now. So -3 works for the pivot for MAD. Double click on this to reset it. But the animation for this rotation, I want it to start from frame 150. Keyframe this and set it to -180. Then I'm going to go to frame 550 here, then set this to 0. Now for Resolve, this is the Resolve branch, this transform here, I'm also going to move its pivot or pivot to maybe 3.2. -3, my bad, -3, so it's at the center here. Let me rotate it and see whether it looks good too. Okay, that looks good too. Double click on this. So for it, I want this bend, I want the rotation to stop around 500 for it. So I'm going to click on here, keyframe the 0, then go to frame 150. Then set this to 180. So if I play it back, you see both of them are coming from different directions and then I'll merge. I can go here and make it perspective so we see it like so. Yeah, so I want it to just be that way, such that Mad lands a little later than Resolve. Just adds a bit of dynamic to it. Now we have the animation for their movement done, but I want to smoothen it out. So I'm going to click on the transform for Resolve, and then also the transform, hold down Control and click on the transform for Mad. Let's open the spline editor, select both tools, and click on zoom to fit here. Then click on this here to select all the keyframes. Then press F on the keyboard, or you can just click on this. Then press T to bring out this ease in and ease out figures. For this ease in, I'm just going to increase it till it gets to like close to 80. And that basically is it. I'm just going to close the spline editor. If I play this back again, you see that the movement is a bit more. Let's just move it here so you see it. And we are done with the movement there. The next thing we do is, after this, I could use a camera to make that movement where we see it zoomed in and we come out and we see all that. But one other thing I want also to do is, I don't want these to be on the same line by the time we see them at the beginning. I want this Mad to be up and this Resolve to be down. So by the time we get to the front here, that's when they all come together like so. So I'm still going to go to this transform for Resolve. I'm going to make sure that at this same point here, I want the Y value to maybe be like minus 0.75. So let's just move to the end so you get to see. So I moved it down by 0.75. I just wanted to see what I moved it down by. Then I wanted to move from this 0.75 now to 0 where it was before. But I want the animation to start at where this other animation here started, which is at frame 150. So I'm going to click on keyframe this, then go to the last keyframe here and set this value for the Y to 0. Same thing for this transform here. Go to this, go to the beginning here. I'm going to increase this by 0.75. Let me see how that looks. Let me go to the end and see how that looks. Cool. It's just up there, then it comes down. Maybe a bit more. Maybe 9.5 then. Okay, cool. 9.5. Let's go to the beginning of this thing. That's 150. Keyframe the Y value. Then we go to the last frame here. And then I'm going to set this to 0. So I'm going to have to smoothen the curves for them. So I'm going to select both transforms. Go to spline editor. Uncheck Y rotation. I've already done the smoothness for that. And I'm going to click on zoom to fit. I'm going to click on this to select all the keyframes. Press F on the keyboard. Then for the easing, I'm just going to do the same thing, close to 80, if not 80 exactly. And close the spline editor. Now we have a situation where you see both of them just coming together and landing together like so. There are two ways to do the movement that you saw at the beginning. I can use a camera, which might actually be easier to do. Or I could use a transform node. In this case, I want to use a transform to do the movement. Bring that in. And let's drag this to the viewer. But to be able to gauge what we are doing, I'm going to bring in, let's just put a merge here. It's a merge here. I need this merge because I want to add light to it. Bring in render 3D, connect that, then change that to software renderer. And let's drag that to the viewer. So we have this view. It looks perfect. but we don't have any lights on it. So let's see whether we can bring lights before we do the transform thing. Let's bring in shift spacebar, bring in the spotlight, connect the spotlight, shift spacebar, ambient light. Let's connect this to that and this to that. For the ambient light, I want it to be 0.5, and I want the spotlight. Let's drag this to the viewer. Let's right click on perspective here, and let's look at it from the left so we see the view. So I'm going to drag this light back a bit. I'm going to increase the cone angle of this light to wide. I'm going to set the decay to linear, and I'm going to increase the intensity of the light by 2. Okay, then I'm going to bring this light back just a little bit more, then drag it up. I'm going to go to transform and rotate it by the X value to something like that, so it kind of comes from up top. And then we can go to render 3D, and we click on this renderer, turn on lights and shadows. So we see, but the light is a little too intense. So I'm going to go to the spotlight. I'm going to pull it back a little more by increasing the Z value. Yeah, so it's like so. Then maybe just increase the ambient light just a little bit more. Let's say 0.75, because you see the matte is a little too reflective. So I'll go to the shader for the matte and the intensity. Just double click on it to reduce it to what it was initially. So we have just that shining, and we're good to go. Now moving on, we now do the transform that we want to do. So I'm going to click on this transform, right? I want the animation to start from around frame 100. I want it to be rotated around Z-axis 90, like so. And I want it to be zoomed in. So I'm going to increase the Z value like so. So I'm just going to increase it like so. Let's drag the Y down a bit. Yeah, like that. Let's zoom in a bit more. Let's drag the Y down a bit. Like that. And then maybe zoom in a bit more. Let's just say 3.5. And increase the Y value just a little bit, like that. Just before it enters that, yeah, something like this. So it's 0.82 minus 0.83. That is cool. So I'm going to click on this, keyframe this value, keyframe this value. And I'm going to go to frame 700 here and set these values to 0. Set this value to 0 and set this value to 0. Go to this transform, go to the spline editor, click on zoom to fit, select all the keyframes by clicking on this, and click on this or press F on the keyboard to smoothen the keyframes. I go to ease in, I increase this to almost 80 or 80 on the dot, something like that. Close the spline editor. Now, what I want to now check is to see whether this looks okay. Now you see it's cutting into the sphere on here. So I'm going to go to this transform, go to the spline editor. Now that cutting in is the Y offset. So I'm just going to uncheck these two. Click zoom to fit for the Y offset. So I'm going to go here and just drag this down. So I'm going to keep checking. It's cutting still. So I'm just going to drag this down a lot more. Then we keep checking. It's still cutting in. So I'll just drag this down a bit more, like so. It's still cutting in. I'm going to drag this down a bit more. So we keep doing that push and pull till we find it doesn't cut in again. Still cutting in here. Like so. Still cutting in there. Just drag this down a bit more. I just want to find that sweet spot where it doesn't cut in, and then it cuts in a little here again. Yeah, like so. I think we are free now. Yeah, good. We can close this file editor. You'll see that this resolve was showing while all that was going on. So it means that the offset for this to go down, for it not to show at all, I need to increase it. So I'm going to go to this transform. Remember, I set this value here to 0.75. So I'm going to set it to 0.95. It's still showing. So I'm just going to keep increasing it till it doesn't show at all. Like so. Let's just make it at minus 1.6, so it doesn't show at all. So now let's play this back. So at the beginning, it's even showing. What gives? So let's go to the transform and move it just a bit like so. So 0.847. So I'm just going to uncheck this keyframe I just created here. Go to this one and make it 0.847. Okay, so let's go to the beginning and let's play it back and see how it looks. So I want to do something. I want to move this transform after the lights. I don't like how the lights show there. So I'm just going to hold down this transform, hold down shift, move it out there and hold down shift while still holding down shift. Drop it on there as it changes color. Right, so it's connected now. So let's play it back again. So we have that movement there. Beautiful stuff. And it's playing in near real time. It's crazy. And I'm using an old GPU, well, relatively kind of old, 2060 on a laptop. This is sick, man. And there we go. We are practically done with the animation, but I want to add a little jazz to it. I want these things to shoot out rays up there. If I add rays directly to the output here, it's just going to make Resolve also start showing rays out. And I don't want this rock to also have to be shooting up rays. Let's bring in. So for this, we have this input here. I'm going to bring in, let's make a copy of this shape and this transform. Copy. And paste that below here. Like so. Let's drag this up. Let's connect this media to the shape. Like so. Just drag this out a little bit. We now connect, there's a transform I put here too. I'm going to make a copy of this transform. I'm going to right click on here and paste instance of it. Connect this to that instance. Then copy this transform. Right click here and paste an instance. Connect this to that instance. Go to this shape here. Let's drag this shape to the viewer. So we have that. For this shape, I'm going to go on the inspector, expand visibility, and call the back. Then click on here. Click renderer 3D. Change it to hardware renderer. I don't want lighting involved. Then let's just move this whole thing back a little bit. Then I'm going to click on here and bring in shift space bar, bring in the rays. Then we'll click on there. Then you see the rays thing working hard there. I've not made any changes to it yet. Let's say I move it to where you see it's a little intense. So what I'll do is increase the decay a little bit. I want it to be long. So this threshold, drop the threshold to 0.5. I want all the dots to pick it up, but I want the decay to drop to maybe 0.005. And then we'll now go to weight and drop that to 1.5. So it's kind of there, a little intense, but you can adjust it as you want. So decay 0.005, weight 1.5, and then threshold 0.5. You click on, make sure it's merge device ticked. So we're going to put, let's drag media out here completely. Let's bring in a merge node. Connect this to the background of the merge node and put this rays on top. Connect the green input of the merge node, like so. Just bring it under here. So if you drag this to the viewer, you'll see it's on top of there. But if you look closely, let me drag this viewer, make it bigger, make it to fit. You see that it's actually on top of Resolve. I don't want it to be on top of Resolve. So what I do to avoid that is I now do a little additional gymnastics. You see, we have the text is actually here, right? Let's right click on this and make it perspective. So we are looking at it from the front. So that's the text. You know what transforms this whole thing here is this transform. So I'm going to copy this transform, copy this, make another instance here, paste instance here, connect this output here to this transform. Then I'll bring in a renderer 3D, connect this to that renderer 3D, put that out here. You see we have just the movement here. Then we bring a bitmap node, let me click outside here, shift spacebar bitmap. Then connect this to the yellow input of the bitmap. Let's drag that to the viewer. You see we have this, but we want to invert the bitmap mask. So I'm going to go to the bitmap, click on invert, like so, and then connect this to the mask input of this merge. If you bring this to the viewer now, you'll see that it's no longer, it's now behind the text. We're done with this. This raise looks pretty intense. We can reduce it later on. Now, I just want to give it a bit of background so it's not just plain background. So I'm going to do a little particle emitter thing. Let's move this up a little bit. Let's bring in a particle renderer, a particle emitter, sorry, then a particle renderer. Connect this. Let's drag this to the viewer. So we see that ball there, but I don't want it to be in 3D space. I'm just going to click on 2D. So we see that ball there. Now for the particle emitter, I go to style, I change it to line. Then increase the size of the line to 5. So we have the line showing. Then I will now go to controls, go to velocity, change it to 0.75. Change the velocity variance to 0.075. Change the angle Z to -90. Then go to rotation and set it to position relative to motion. So it's firing towards us. So I just go to style. Its line is fine. Fade controls. I can just change this from 0.85. So it's still showing. And color controls, we can just leave color controls for now. And we have that going. Then after p-render, I'm going to bring in a glow node. I'm going to the blend, I'm just going to increase it to 1. I want the glow to be 1, 2. Let's just drag this to the viewer. It's too much. Double click on this to reduce it so we have that going. Then the glow size, drop it to 1.5. So we see the particles. Then after this, we bring in a soft glow node. Just add a bit of thing to it. Then this one will just increase the glow size to 100, so it's just a little glowy, and we are done. So we bring in a merge node here, connect this merge to the foreground, and we connect this to the background, and then we now bring the media out, connect this to media out, drag media out here, and we have that going. But you realize we have transparent background, which is not what we want. So I'm just going to go here, bring in a black background, maybe make it slightly blue. Let's go to blue, like so, maybe dark blue, something like so. Then I'm going to bring in another merge node, connect this to the foreground of this merge node, and connect this background to the yellow input of the merge node. Now connect the output of this merge to the background here. So we have this, looks like the background is a little still too blue. Let's click on it, make it really dark blue, just a hint of blue. So, and that's it, guys, we're done. Drag this to the viewer, and this is it. Let's go to your timeline and let's play it back. The funny thing is, now these particles are moving a little too fast. Just a little thing I need to adjust. Let's go back to the Fusion comp. Let's go to PM meter. Let's go to controls and set the number to 1. Okay, let's go back to this and let's see how it looks. So it is moving as I want it to move, but I think particle emitter is doing too much. So I'm going to make it 0.5 number of particles. So it's once in a while I see a particle fly by or star fly by. One other thing I think I need to adjust for the Fusion comp is if I go to this PM meter, I need to increase, so it's increase the size, like so, almost filling the screen. So if we go back, so we go here, that's better. Like so. It's amazing that this is okay. You see something there? That's what I want to avoid. Something showed here. Something showed here. Did you see that result? That result that was played, that was showing there. Aha. See this resolve here? We need to remove this resolve. This is because of the bitmap we added. So this here is what I was looking out for. So to avoid this showing, you see the resolve is not yet on the screen. So there's no reason for this mask to be in play. The mask, this bitmap mask I have here. So what I'm going to do is shift, just click on the blank part, bring in a dissolve node, connect this to the yellow input of the dissolve node. Now bring in a background node, drag that here, make the color of this background white, and click OK. Connect this to the foreground. So what I'm going to do is move this back by pressing the back arrow on, just move it forward till I have the text showing on the screen. So result starts popping up. So I think right about here. So I'll click on dissolve and keyframe this, move forward, then drop this keyframe down. So if I now connect this to here, so what this does is it makes this below this. If I move the backwards, you see it's just all white. So what this means is that artifact here, this artifact here will not show until the actual texts start showing on the screen. So that's why I have this. Let's drag this to the viewer. So well, before it was showing on top of this, but no longer shows on top of it. So we have this perfectly done now, and we are good to go. That's what this is for. Hope you understand what I just did though, just to erase the artifact. And guys, we are good to go. What I like about all of this is I think Davinci Resolve is now so optimized that even 3D complex things like this, well, relatively complex stuff like this, practically plays in real time on a 2016 graphics laptop. This is sick. So basically this is it. For it to play, the rays are a little too much. We can reduce it subsequently, I guess. We can just reduce the blend. Yeah, let's reduce the blend. It's a little too much. It's a little too much. Rays, you be doing too much. Where are you? So if I reduce the blend to 0.8, maybe 0.7, it's still too much, 0.5. That's better. It's a bit better. So that's basically it. What I'd advise in this kind of instance, you can either do render cache smart, which is what I'll do in this case, because I want to now play full screen and I want it to move smoother than this. Or you can just right click on it and click on render in place. Then you can render it as Grass Valley doesn't consume as much space as DNxHR, but DNxHR has a better quality. And I'll just do smart, this render smart, and wait for it to cache. Then I'll play it full screen. Okay, so it's finished caching. It took a while. It took about, I don't know, like 5 minutes before it cached. Let's see the full thing in all its glory. And guys, sweet looking stuff, if you ask me. And there it is. That's basically it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. I did. I might change the shader for this Resolve. I don't like the way it kind of looks now. It looks a little too rough. So I'm just gonna go. Let's go to Fusion, and let's go to. I used brushed metal. I want to connect Chrome to the actual text, not the edge. So I'm just going to connect Chrome to this part. Yeah, Chrome looks cleaner. But because it looks a little too plain, I'll just do a little something. Double click on Chrome. Let's bring in a fast noise node into this group here. Let's bring in shift spacebar, bring in the bump map node. Then for this fast noise, I drag it to the viewer. Let's zoom to fit here. I'm just going to uncheck the scale here and make this maybe like 500. Like so. Then connect. Hold down Alt on the keyboard, drag and connect to Word. Then connect it to bump map material. Now for the bump map here, let's make it 5. And let's just make the height scale maybe 5. Now, if I close this now, and I bring the media out here, I zoom in, hold down Control, scroll in. See, just slight compared to the brushed metal. Very good. Go to Edit page. Then we have a better looking text than the brushed metal look. So I'll wait for this to cache again. It's going to take a while. But that's basically it, guys. Just a few minor adjustments here and there, and we have the sweet looking stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. And I like what you see. It's beautiful stuff. Okay, didn't cache that fast on my system. I kind of cut to where it finished rendering the cache. It took about 5 minutes, thereabout. But when it was done, this is so smooth, sick stuff. This is an exciting one. I enjoyed it. It's a bit long, I know, but I'll put time stamps so you can skip to the point where you want to get to. And they keep adding mad features. Like Davinci Resolve 19 is full of sick, crazy stuff. And I can't wait to share some of them with you and what I do with them. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.